my mother first introduced me to piano notation and then passed me over to a teacher, it was considered normal for someone who played to also compose. And so it was nothing unusual or unexpected, because my generation of growing up as an instrumentalist also meant that you would sit down and write something. Some wrote more, some less, but it was part of the business of becoming a musician, or at least even studying music. So it wasn't just the digital part of it, it was thinking about how pieces put together, and then inevitably thinking, I wonder if I can do this differently, or dare I say it, better. So it began very early. It's a disease which has no known cure. My name is Larry-Sitsky. I'm a composer, but I'm also a pianist, educator, researcher, one-time broadcaster. So some days I get up and I don't know what hat to put on. Today I think I'm a composer with supposedly long memory. Composition is influenced by at least two external factors. The first and most important is, of course, what you're writing for. So if it's an orchestral piece or a piano piece, the first step is already a big difference in approach. The second aspect is structure, and I need to have a clear structure before I write a note. If I'm writing a piano piece, I write it at the piano, which seems totally reasonable to me. And so a lot of my manuscripts have fingering in them. If I'm writing for orchestra or transcribing something, it won't necessarily be at the piano, which is in another room down there. I'll be sitting here at the desk. So the modus operandi becomes different. I don't like systems music, and so I can't just draw up a chart of a 12-tone row or whatever, or any kind of row, any number, and just say, well, this is note 1, this is note 2. I've been there, I've done that. It wasn't much fun, so I got away from it. Elements of it might have taught me some things, but in general, no. I need an outside stimulus. The structure is often inspired, almost always, inspired by reading of some kind. All those strange titles which you might have noticed among my pieces, they all come from reading particular kinds of literature. And so if you look at the titles of many of the pieces, they're references to mostly mythology or mythology/religious belief. And a lot of them come from, surprise, Asiatic sources or Hebrew sources, which in my mind are actually quite close anyway. So then, what's a good example? First piano sonata. I picked something that came into my head. First piano sonata has a title in French, which I don't speak, which means a ceremony of purification by water. It's a description of a voodoo ceremony, which I'd read in one of my spooky books. And reading that description started up noises in my head. So it needs what I call a springboard. That's a term that I use with my composition students. Because there's nothing worse than coming out, sitting down, there's a blank sheet of manuscript paper staring you in the face. The possibilities at that moment are endless. And so where do you start? If I reach out to write a B, something in my brain might say, hey, what's wrong with the B flat? To which I have no answer. So then it stops the whole process because I've questioned the very first note. So there's a balance thing that has to occur as well, which is that the instinctive side of the brain has to be allowed to manifest itself, and the rational side does its work but then needs to get out of the way. Without it, for me, nothing would happen. I should tell you that when I'm in the throes of composing a piece, particularly one that's emotionally charged, like Feast of Lanterns, it's very hard to sleep. If someone wants to become an insomniac, that's a very good way. Because you climb into bed, the thing won't stop. It's kind of cooking in your head. I can't switch the sound off. So it has that very negative side. And it doesn't matter what you're working on. And I never found an easy way to shut it off. It stops when I finish the piece.